we decided this was the good time for a hepatitis C peer project. And so we parachuted into many people's lives, recruited interested women to be a part of the program.
2011, HIV North started a Hep C project for peer mentors funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada. And we started the project basically because we had identified that Aboriginal women were primarily the focus, and primarily the amount of women that we were serving within our community was Aboriginal women. So we identified a need to provide more training for peer mentors so that they would be able to go out into the community and teach each other about prevention and awareness for hepatitis C. We held our meetings and we determined that the best way for us to go forward would be with particular elders in the community. We had one elder who was from the Blackfoot tribe and one who was a keeper of knowledge, not necessarily an elder, but yet was able to help guide us through the process. This was given in part because of the fact that we did not have a full-time person that we could call on as an elder in our community. And we recognize that many communities are the same. They don't necessarily have elders in place that they can identify with right away. Through the project, we also then went and had women at our Women's Drop-In attend talking circles and tell us what language they wanted us to use in regards to the manual and how would they best learn about the prevention of hepatitis C and awareness with their own language, and what was it that they wanted to see.
I'm Trish Sincox. I work with Alberta Health Services, Addiction Mental Health. I got involved with the Aboriginal Hep C project after I was working with HIV North on another project. They asked if I would be interested in being involved in an Aboriginal Hep C project that would include developing a manual, in training people to facilitate groups, resources for Aboriginal women with Hep C.
What I enjoy about spending my time here with you guys is the questions that you ask are all from a unique perspective, and that's also what I've enjoyed about working with different educators over the years. Is I'm passionate about hepatitis C in a completely different way than a lot of my colleagues are, so that change in perspective is really exciting too. So I guess I've said enough about me, so we'll go around this way.
Anne-Marie Kiwasu. I missed a couple of the talking circles, but I've actually learned a lot, and I've talked to a few people about it, and it's amazing how much, like just general public doesn't really understand, and it's like, oh, really? So it's actually kind of cool to talk about something that people, they wonder about it, but they don't know who to talk to, and it's easy to talk to somebody that you know, more so than talking to, say, Jared in a serious conversation, because you get more information from the person that way. I am Cree, treaty, but I was raised in a white home all my life. So I look Native, I was raised white, and there's like, I can talk to white people, I don't know, however you want to say that, or Natives, and I understand both sides because I've been raised both white and Native, which kind of, I think I was blessed that way, because it's given me the opportunity to see my life from a white perspective, being raised Native and being Native raised white. So I feel I have an advantage because I'm not just stuck on one side of the fence. You know, like some people like to say, oh, you're Native, and I'm not Native, I'm Native white Native. So it's kind of, it's an opportunity to expand my horizons too, like in my own personal thinking, in that I'm not segregated to one group, I guess if you want to fluent, in a variety of different thinking and ways of being. Not everybody's perfect, so I mean, I would not be a perfect role model, but a mentor. I know where, like if somebody says, well, don't do drugs, I have knowledge as to why, personal experience, but to say role model, I'm not too comfortable with that, because that puts a kind of a line there on personally speaking, because a model you look to, a mentor you talk to.
I'm Natasha Okmal, and I'm a mother of 3. I'm on mat leave right now. I've been able to do a few talking circles with Baby's Best Start and not Circle of Aboriginal Students, the Aboriginal Head Start program, for which I actually work for. And it's been really good. And we also did the pregnant teen program. It's just everyone seems to not really have an idea of what Hep C is and how it's transmitted. So it's been fun informing people, because myself, I got clarity doing this, because I thought I knew what it was, but apparently I didn't. And it's been really good doing this.
My name is Fran. I've participated in a few talking circles and facilitating, and they're all learning lessons in the community and for myself. And yeah, I feel the same as Natasha. There is so much that we don't know that we are learning that is so important to share. And I'm really happy to have this opportunity to do something for the community that's not just going to last today, but can continue on for a long time and for the people we talk to. So I hope you can make that out.
My name's Ashley Peckus. I'm a first-year nursing student, and I'm just here to observe, and it'll be a big learning experience for me for sure. It'll be good.
I'm Tiffany Head. I'm also a first-year nursing student at the GPRC. We get stationed at different places in this public health clinical rotation, so coming here, didn't know we were going to be filmed, so I was kind of like blindsided. But I'm really looking forward to it, only because of the fact that I don't really know much about hepatitis C. I haven't really had the opportunity to learn the knowledge, so I'm really looking forward to this opportunity.
I'm Roseanne Mustus, and I'm kind of, the coordinator for this project, the Aboriginal Peer Support Project. And I've really enjoyed working on it. It's been a positive experience. One of the I guess the things that we worked with peers on was the barriers to coming to the sessions, and there were a few, actually a majority of the moms were saying that getting daycare for their kids was a barrier. So we worked with that, and we invited them to bring their kids as well, and it's been really a good experience. I've enjoyed having the boys and the little girl here, and I think when we were doing the talking circles, the elder was speaking about that and saying that there are many elders that won't even start a talking circle unless there's a child within the circle, and I think it's really, it was really good to have them here. And like Fran said, I think whether we sometimes don't think that they're absorbing what we're saying, and they're going to remember these sessions we've been having. They may not remember everything that was said, but they'll remember. And that's it. The project is it's a positive project where even if we started off with 10 peer support mentors, I guess. And although our numbers are down a bit, we are still, even just giving that information out about hepatitis C to the individuals that are coming in, they're able to, even the other ones that were there, they've got the information. We did some training about hepatitis C, and we also did some training on Aboriginal culture, and so they've got that knowledge, that awareness with them, and they're taking it out there. Even if they're not still with the project, they're still helping by sharing that information out there. Aboriginal people include the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. And we've had, of the 10 peers we had 2 of the 3. And I think within the Aboriginal cultural piece, it was more, what I was more concerned about, I guess, is the local culture as opposed to culture in BC or, elsewhere. It was more using, respecting the culture, the local culture, and working with the people on teachings around the local culture. When we've done our teachings around, when Winona was doing the teachings around the Aboriginal culture and talking circles, everyone, all the peers, were very respectful of learning and following what was taught. We've never run across any problem where there's no one that would follow the protocols around a talking circle.
I think it'd be really interesting to hear, you guys have done some circles so far or been talking in community, or even maybe from your own personal experience. Off the top of your heads, what makes it difficult? We'll go to Roseanne first. I'll give her lots of warning. What makes it difficult to bring up issues around either drug use or sexuality? And so that obviously goes to Hep C. But what's stopping us in our community groups to really hashing that out in a helpful way?
My family never really spoke about sexuality, and I think it's a lot of the teachings around religious teachings that it's not something you speak about, and I think it just was kind of a topic that was never brought up openly, and I think it really, we grew up with that, or I grew up with that with my older siblings and my parents, and I tried to put an end to that. I speak with my children freely and ask them to ask me questions or whatever when they were younger.
The dirty secret in the family that someone's an addict. And I think it's up to the newer generations to break that. I know with my age group, we're a lot more open talking about things like that. And I know with my children, I've right from the get-go, I've always taught them the proper names for sexual parts. And I've even had the sex talk with them, and they're 8 and 5 right now. And I've really stressed it's something that only adults do, right? So I'm a firm believer that start young with them, and it'll be drilled into their head that it just becomes second nature by the time they're older. I'm hoping, fingers crossed. And same thing with drugs. I've actually shown my oldest the faces of meth on YouTube, just so she knows what can happen when you use drugs. Because it's one thing to say don't do drugs, it can hurt you. It's another to actually show them the effects of it. And I think it's just something, the more you talk about it, the more comfortable people will be discussing it.
It's really fun talking to young kids, and I think that's really probably the time to bring these conversations in. For one, when we look at the statistics where people are going to have their first interactions with, say, even alcohol, a lot of it's grade 8, grade 7 in the north. And so, you know, if people are going to be experimenting with drugs, it's usually not long after their first experimenting with alcohol. And sexuality often comes into that mix as well. But it's just fun being in that environment of junior high kids because there's not this presumption that they should know everything about drugs and sex. And so they're more open to asking questions. And so that's gotten me thinking, is that translating into our adult groups as well? You know, am I afraid of kind of coming off as if I don't know enough about something, and so I'm not asking questions and I'm not learning new ways of teaching that?
We've been met with a lot of silence when it comes to personal experiences, but they've had a lot of questions, and we've been very open with answering them. Like, sometimes it took 3 or 4 go-rounds of the stick before we got some people to start asking a lot of questions. And, you know, like I pointed out, like, you know, with the blood play with sex, like that is a possibility. You know, you could see some of them squirming when I talked about it or giggling, right? And it's still, like I said, it's a hard subject for some people to be comfortable. And these are women that have met in groups on their own before, so they've gotten to know each other, and they're still, it seemed, a little bit hesitant.
They asked if I would volunteer to take the training so that I could bring back the information to the parents, the other parents that are and the staff of the Head Start in the form of a talking circle format to share what I've learned about hepatitis C. The intention of that is that once we educate people about hepatitis C, that they will in turn educate other people and their children, and they will continue the dialogue in many different forms with the intention of helping people reduce the harm. The Friendship Center is always, in any city you go to, it's always a central point for Native people to know they can go to get information about programs, services, and a talking circle about hepatitis C would not be surprising to just spontaneously occur in a cultural sense at a Friendship Center. It's a very good venue for sharing information amongst Aboriginal people as peers in a cultural way.
In a sharing circle, everybody gets a chance to speak, not just one person. Everybody's equal in a sharing circle. I think that's what's so important about it. There's no judgment in a sharing circle, and you just basically say what's in your heart and in your mind.
Each time you go around the circle, no matter how many participants you have, maybe the level of comfort of information gets deeper. Initially, people might be uncomfortable if they're unfamiliar with the topic, but as they feel more comfortable each time that stick goes around, so to speak, more information could be shared, more could be expressed, or even more willing to listen. If somebody doesn't say anything, they're listening. So I think a talking circle is an important way of creating rapport among people who don't know one another. Maybe it's more than one talking circle, but it's a safe place. If it's respected, and it should be, people know that what is said there stays there. The circle doesn't need to only focus on hepatitis C. It can be, anything can come up in that space and be shared. It is an important medium. I'm from a small place. My family's on the reserve. It's most of them. But I've also lived off reserve for a very long time. We lived on the edge. And so I've lived in both senses, and so I see a really big difference personally. And I've worked on the reserve and I've worked off the reserve. So I think that the important qualities of a peer educator need to be looked at in context of the situation. Somebody talking to a tween
needs to have different qualities than talking to somebody that's in their late 40s, of course. I think overall, though, humbleness is very important. Knowing how to listen and be quiet, that's a big part of being humble. Not assuming you know everything, that everybody is a teacher, no matter who that person is. It could be the person sitting on the street, very sick with addictions, but they're still a teacher. So always having that in your heart, or knowing that, or being open to that idea that everybody is a teacher. We're there to teach people what we know about hepatitis C, but by listening, they can teach us so that we can better teach in the future. I think non-judgmental, of course, is important. Flexibility to where people are at, being comfortable in numerous situations, because not everybody's going to be wearing office clothes, or the people that we want to talk to are in many variety of places. So being very flexible to different types of people, situations, and hours, I think that's important. I think in understanding, when you're speaking, I think Aboriginal people need to speak to Aboriginal people. I think a lot of us have a lot of experiences, as in any culture, I guess, is not specific to ours, but having kind of that pre-connection or understanding always helps. I also think language is very important, quite literally language in the sense of being able to speak Cree or English, depending on who you're talking to, is very important. Some people, well, they say it about all languages. Some things just cannot be said in English as well. So, or the message you want to convey. So if possible, I think that's very important, especially speaking to an older group of people where Cree might be much more comfortable to speak. I think a sense of humor and laughter is very important. It's a very big part of the culture, being able to laugh no matter what. Laughter is what often gets you through things. And it can be a very sad situation, but people, in my experience, you'll always find Native people laughing because it's healing. So people need to have a very good sense of humor and be open to other people's sense of humor, because laughter is healing. I think there is a difference in the Aboriginal community being rural or on reserve and urban. I think there's not a difference in your heart as a Native person. You're Native wherever you go. The difference is at home or on the reserve or in a small place, everybody already knows each other simply because that's where they're from. They already have that connection. Everybody's related fairly closely or distantly, but there's already a connection. Everybody knows the events in the community. Everybody knows who's getting married, who's sick, who's having a baby. So all those things are, those layers of information are kind of there. Ways of getting information. Everybody knows who to talk to if they want to find out about whatever it may be. It could be gossip, it could be education, funding. Everybody already knows who to talk to. In the city, now that changes because you don't know who to talk to. You don't have that same network. You have small ones, people know one another, but on a larger scale, the community, the connection threads get a little finer, I think, because they're getting stretched further from each other, not only in distance. Houses are not so close together. Everything is bigger, it's farther apart. So the relationship or the connection gets a little stretched at times. And how the program could adapt to the differences between trying to provide the information on reserve and trying to provide it off reserve is to capitalize on those connections that are already there on reserve. I think because it's based on these talking circles and sharing information is all based on communication and sharing in a very intimate way in a circle. If people already know each other and they're all related, then have them in people's homes. Don't have it as a formal event that's going to happen at the community hall. Have it in someone's home where you know a lot of people will be. And I just think it as a spontaneous thing, just to having educated people in the community on the reserve who could do that at a drop of a hat, always be prepared to talk if they have an audience, would be important. That could get a lot more information out there than trying to put up posters and trying to schedule it and see if people are actually going to come.
Hepatitis C is not a sexually transmitted infection, but when it comes down to it, we really are seeing most of the infection in people sharing injection drug use equipment. So that's everything from the needle to the spoon where the drug may be prepped to filters that are used in that process as well. As I've been paying attention through my career at HIV North, I'm surprised at how many conversations come up around infectious disease. I don't think we really get totally comfortable with all the material until you reach like the 100th time you've actually talked about it.
As a mom, it terrifies me. That's one of the things that give me anxiety is because I have 2 girls. I see them at more risk than my son. Like, yes, he has just as much chance of having things happen to him, but as females, I think the percentage is higher on that, isn't it? And this is one of the things that keep me up at night, to be honest. And I just hope I'm doing a good job.
At HIV North, we use harm reduction, which is the being non-judgmental, meeting people where they're at, and really being open to having a conversation about people's lives. And we like to sell ourselves as, we'll talk about where you're at. Don't expect that you need to come in with the plan of cleaning up today or even making a more positive choice today, if that's not what you want to talk about. But there's a large disconnection, and I've talked with a lot of different people now, between saying that and people really understanding it.
Some of the cultures here I find in the North are pretty open to the perspectives because they're universal. We generally don't have a lot of issues or challenges when we're going into a community and transferring that knowledge and giving that information. And I know I acknowledge the diversity in Alberta because you have the Cree in the north and you have the Blackfoot in the south, and they do things differently. However, the concepts in the end are pretty much the same. We might use different objects when we're running these circles, but everybody in a circle acknowledges that, there are differences, but they don't pose any significant challenges for us when we're going out into the communities. They're quite open and accepting of the process and the objects that we use in our sharing circles. And we've explored different settings and environments, and we haven't done any studies to look at what environment is more conducive than the other than just looking at different ways that we can maybe look at going into the more rural setting or urban settings, rural settings. And so, yeah, we haven't, this program is still really in its infancy. It's 2-3 months. So the whole idea is to get, work on that, develop that piece, and look at what's working and what's not. When you're looking at illness, as an Aboriginal person, and my perspective only, I'm thinking in terms of how I and my ancestors have treated any illness that's come forward in the family, and that we always had different forms or methods of healing practices and medicines for disease. And that was well before European contact. Now that we have a Western way of thinking and treating people, the focus is more on the symptom, right? So what we look at in our culture is treating not only the illness itself, but treating the mind and the body and the spirit. So we look at it from a holistic perspective, and you work with the individual as a whole not as a part. So we acknowledge the individuals who bring that knowledge to the people that do have those skills and do have those healing techniques to work with individuals in our communities, because they do exist. We do have traditional healers, medicine, and people in our communities that most generally the population in those communities would be aware of or not. What I find really interesting about, educating people around things like this is a lot of times they will tell you, if I had known, or if I was educated enough to know about, the risks around Hep C and some of the dangers that it may possess in an individual's life or in the future, the likelihood of them not, doing a lot of these or portraying a lot of these risky behaviors, it would go down. So, I hear that a lot across, the north here in Alberta, is that if I had known about some of this, maybe I would have thought about it more seriously, and I wouldn't have played with my life so much.
Off-reserve urban settings, I think, yes, using central points like the Friendship Center, very well-known organizations, is how to start the process. But I think it's the people that are living in the situations we want to reach that we need to be the educators. Like my colleague or fellow peer worker, Anne-Marie, she's a prime, perfect person to be doing this work. Nobody knows better than her how to talk to these specific groups of people and what information that they'd be willing to receive in increments. You can't just throw it all at them.
With the reserves and stuff, they need to open their mind and ears and everything else to the possibilities that, there's people out there that actually want change in their own group settlement reserve, and yet not all their members are on reserve or off reserve, so they have to adapt to reach everybody. You have to expand your thought process, open your mind up to different possibilities. It's not always just stuck in one little way of being, and the only way to change something is to actually make that commitment to look at other possibilities. And with this project, there's quite a few people, like even in the city, that are thinking a little bit different about like Hep C and like what personal people can do.
What are the next steps in the project, right? This particular one ends, but how do we capitalize or leverage the capital that we've invested, right? Or what we've invested in the peers and these excited young women who are now trained to do some really awesome work in their community. So looking forward, I think we're going to try to explore more so the challenges, what went not as expected in the last year and a half with the project, and how do we, instead of just accepting that it was something that went wrong or didn't go as planned, really shape the future of the program so that it's much stronger, I guess, capitalizing on that.
Throughout the project, there were many individuals, both within the stakeholder group and within the peers themselves, that did not continue on through the project throughout the 2-year project. In part, the busy schedules was identified for many of the stakeholders. We noticed at the beginning of the project as well that by the time we had received our funding for the project, many of the stakeholders that had identified as being a part of the project to begin with had gone through a change in leadership. And so we had different people at the table to begin with to talk about the project. And there was a lot of learning that needed to happen at that stage then, because we no longer had the people we'd been in conversation with at the table, but we had to re-educate the new people. Also, peer mentors, it was difficult at times to keep peer mentors involved, specifically more so with the street-involved peer mentors that were involved in the project. Many of them were no longer in a position that they were able to come forward and take part in the circles, nor did they choose to. And we respected that. People need to be where they want to be at all times, and I don't ever want to force anybody into the peer project. So in the province of Alberta right now, there are peer mentor projects that are ongoing. One is with the Alberta Addicts Who Educate and Advocate Responsibly. They use peer mentors to go in and discuss drug use with each other, and so they build support and encouragement within their group together, and they learn about their addictions together, and it's been very successful. Another project that has used peer mentors is Streetworks in Edmonton. Has used peer mentors with their street population, and I believe it was with pregnant women, and doing prevention and education with the pregnant women in their community, and it's been very successful as well. Peers relate very well to each other as a whole. Most people want to speak to somebody who is a peer with themselves and is more open to receiving information from a peer rather than from somebody who claims to be a health professional or who claims to be higher up in the ladder. HIV North is looking forward to increasing this project over the next year and actually expanding it into many of the communities within our region. We're looking forward to hiring new peer mentors to come forward and learn the information and take it back into their communities, primarily in the northern part, in High Level area, and in the southern part of our region in Grand Cache. We're looking very much forward into going into the Aboriginal communities there and providing them with some tools that the women can then build the capacity within their own communities.